be aware, and then understand why you do something. Be at purpose all the time. If you're constantly at purpose and objective, you're ferociously capable.
Thanks everyone for joining us today on Guide to HR. I'm super excited to have my guest star here, Brad Smith. He's the founder and CEO of Stellar Insight Inc., a business growth consulting and coaching company. He's a chemist, production plant and equipment designer, business manager, business consultant, and executive coach for CEOs and business owners. In his own words, everything is a theory until you experience it and can consciously repeat the experiment. He limits his work to ambitious, curious CEOs, business owners, and their teams who are committed to their company's excellence and growth. He also runs a program for deep intuition development for CEOs and R&D teams. Welcome, Brad. It's great to have you on the show today.
I'm delighted.
So tell me that I have never met anyone like you before. I love your background and I love what you're trying to do, bringing conscientiousness to the business world. So tell me, what is the best advice you can give for an aspiring entrepreneur?
This is short and abrupt. If you're not aware when you're driving down the road, how can you keep yourself out of a ditch? So my best advice is be present and be aware, and don't put your ego in front of the things you're seeing and feeling and hearing. Be present.
That is so powerful and such a two-word sentence that is very hard for all of us. I think, well, maybe I shouldn't say all of us. I also find it hard sometimes to be present. I was just on another call earlier this morning and I kept telling myself, focus back to the call, because I kept letting my mind wander. I kept letting myself get distracted with my second monitor. So it's not as easy as it sounds.
No, there's actually a muscle. So I'm a 28-year meditator. And the thing you practice in meditation when you get about 4 or 5 years down the road, the thing you start practicing is how to regulate the muscle that brings you present. There's a mental will muscle, if you would, that, when you get, like you said, right, distracted, diffused, not present, and then you bring yourself back to presence. That's literally what meditation is all about. How to regulate that muscle of presence or not presence. Doesn't matter if your mind's running, if your emotions are running or anything, but that muscle is the core of being a human being.
Wow, interesting. I know a lot of founders and CEOs, executive members. It seems like meditation is coming up a lot recently in my conversations. What kind of tools would you suggest people look into? I mean, there's so many apps now. There's so many things that you could do. Do you have a favorite of yours?
So there's about 3 different types of meditation that I recommend. One is through the Self-Realization Fellowship, Kriya Yoga. Okay, so that's what they teach, the Self-Realization Fellowship. Transcendental meditation is just the repetition of a nonsensical sentence, not sentence. It's literally a sound, right?
Oh, okay.
That I do, but I also do what's called binaural beat, which means I listen to a recording from the Self-Realization Fellowship that puts 2 sounds into my ears, one at one frequency, one at another, and then the brain puts the difference between the 2 as a resonance across the brain. And so over time, you build up the neural pathways across the brain so that it will hold those frequencies. Those frequencies are beta for analytical thinking, alpha for daydreaming, and when the ideas pop in. Theta is a deeper level of brainstorming, but also the top level of a sleep cycle, 30 minutes in, and then delta is the bottom 30 minutes of a 90-minute sleep cycle. So you go in, you're in theta, you go down to delta, which is very, very low, and then you come back up. I have gotten over my 28 years gotten to the place where I can shift my consciousness while I'm physically aware and active into delta. And that means that I can be present and aware. So pick any of those you want, pick any binaural beat you want. The one at the Self-Realization Fellowship is the best that I've found, but it's also structured and moderated.
And I mean, what do you find as being a positive outcome? What you've seen 28 years, that's awesome that you've dedicated so much time. If a CEO or a founder were to start picking this up and being diligent about doing it, what could you give them insight into, like, the ROI? What are they going to see? How are they going to start experiencing that in 6 months or even a year later?
Well, okay. So what I found was a year to a year and a half in, I went from being depressed, which I didn't know I was, depressed and reactive, to calm and objective. Okay.
That's what you definitely want to be when you're making decisions,
Well,
especially in a stressful, pressured environment.
Well, if you're objective, you take in it. I was a chemist. If you're standing there and wound up about whether the beaker's going to boil water or not, that's different than if you're just sitting there and observing it, right? And
Yeah.
so the goal is to observe the situation and get to the core forces involved. If someone's not a good hire, you need to know that. Could they be changed? Would they be willing to change? So then the next piece of advice is be aware and then understand why you do something. Be at purpose all the time. If you're constantly at purpose and objective, you're ferociously capable.
That's powerful, two ingredients. And I love how you say being aware. I think, knowledge is power, right? They say that all the time. And having the knowledge of how you're in the moment and how you're reacting to it will help you shape who you become in the future in that same instance.
So then I have a third piece that I will throw in here.
Okay.
I have a deep lesson that I learned, started at age 18, and I'll get into that story in a minute. But if you look at character, not as a fixed thing, but as a set of habits you've developed literally from birth out to where you are now, doesn't matter whether you're 10, 15, 50, 40, 30, 90, right? That's a set of habits that if you focus on them, they can be modified. So when I ask people what's the most important value they have, and I listen to the list that they come out, what I listen to for is integrity. Because in my definition, integrity is what I think, what I believe, actually the other way, what I believe, what I think, what I say, and what I do have to all align. If I am not in alignment, then I'm out of integrity. And my diligent force is, how can I be the most effective and powerful in each moment? And by being in integrity with myself, then I can be in integrity with what comes out of me into the world. So awareness, right? On purpose and integrity.
I love that. So tell me, you have your own company, Stellar Insight. So what's Stellar Insight all about?
Stellar Insight is about my ambition. I love this. If I work with ambitious people, most of the time, one of the metrics in growing a business, or for that matter, a state or a country, is how, one way to measure it is what's the gross revenue. So you can do that for a company. What's the gross revenue, right? What's the net revenue? In other words, what do they get out of it? For a country, let's put it this way, if they were to measure it, what's the gross domestic product? And then what's the gross domestic product per citizen, right? Or per employee, right?
Yeah.
And the more efficient you are and effective you are in that, the number of dollars per individual grows. What would happen in this country or a state, right? If they were able to grow the gross domestic product of the state by 5%, that would be massive.
Yeah, it would be.
So my goal with my clients is, where are you right now? Understand who they are, who the company is, what they do, and who their customers are, that whole realm, right? And then see how they all fit, go down through the processes with them and say, okay, what is your goal that you think you can achieve? This is the fun part. Think you can achieve in the next year and then the next 5 years, right? What's your goal? And then I ask, why are you? Why is that your goal? When someone tells me it's money, what's my whole purpose is money. It's like I always say garbage, because money is an object. It's immaterial. The point is, it's a tool for achieving what we want. It doesn't matter whether it's safety or financial calm, right? Or, to be credible or to gain respect or to help the customers, right? It doesn't matter what it is. But you have to know your purpose and be clear about that. So we do that. And I love helping my clients add zeros to their revenue.
And that's on the left side of the decimal.
Yep.
Right? Yeah.
On the left side of the decimal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So for companies, you talk about purpose, right? And knowing your purpose, it's so important. I mean, so many companies, they have their purpose through their mission, their vision, their values.
Yeah, right. And how many
Yeah.
people can repeat it?
Right, exactly. And how many people, I mean, I have a couple clients who've done engagement surveys, and most of them are never that great on the connection to the meaning, not driving it all the way down to their employee population. So when you're helping the CEOs and founders and other high-level individuals that you work with, do you get to a point where you help them move that clarity downwards?
That's when we get into culture work.
Okay.
Right? And culture is a combination of unspoken things and spoken things. If your mission is this, have it so that everybody repeats it. Literally walk up to them and say, hey, what's our mission? And why does that resonate with you? In other words, why are you working here? I had a group of attorneys when I very first started, like 25 years ago, started doing strategic planning facilitations. I had a group of attorneys. This is a tough group, right?
Yeah.
So I asked them, the first thing we did in that, the first whole morning, I asked each one of them, why are you in your profession? And why did you choose to work here? And the things that they learned about themselves and about each other changed the connection and the rapport and the camaraderie in that room and in that specific group. They had no idea they were going to get that. I actually didn't. I do now, though. But to watch people understand why, that's critical.
Yeah, so true. So do you have any tips or tricks that you could share with the audience that they could take away and start practicing now to help them get a more clarity in regards to their mission or where their goal is, what they're driving to?
I have a trick that I do. When I walk into, and I had a client who was part of a nonprofit. And when I walked in the door, his assistant said, this, and this is what's going on. I hope you can help him. And so 4 weeks later, I asked her again, how's he doing? And have I helped him? And she said, significantly. Okay, so ask your partner, if you have one, all the bad things that you do and list them out and make them, including, if you've got an assistant, ask them. If you've got people around you, ask them, what are the things that I do that irritate the crud out of you? What is it that I do to interfere with the growth of this company? That's a hard question. Yeah. Write it down and make your goal. So this is one of my goals every year. My goal is to take my very worst state, my very best person, who I am at the very best, and make that in as quickly as possible, within a year maybe, my very worst self. Okay? So write down all the things you do that interfere, all the things that bother you about the world. I recently had this come back to me. It's like, okay, Brad, we want you to write down all the things that you're judgmental about. And then look for the fear and the driving force underneath each one of those and see if you can modify that. Ego is based on top of insecurity. Narcissism is based on something you let go of at about age 2. So the 4 or 5 things that are hard to turn, right? But if you have all the answers, then the company can only be as good as you are. Right? So
Yeah.
how do you ask, who do you get are your people involved in the best decisions?
Yeah. Wow. That's really deep.
That's why we named it Stellar.
I also like that you named it Insight too, because I think that a lot of CEOs, founders, executive level individuals, as you get higher up in your corporate life or even the government life, I know you focus on the government sector as well, that like you tend to lose perspective or you tend to lose the team around you that is helping you understand where you might be going off track and giving you that insight that's very to date and very real. And a lot of times I've heard so many executives tell me, oh, well, my CEO only wants me to be a yes person. Or I've heard so many CEOs say, I'm looking for people who are not going to be a yes person, right?
Right.
And they're looking for people to really bounce ideas off, but also get feedback from. So is that also what you do inside of your job?
I teach, one of the things I get to do is I teach my clients how to be who they are. That's the first part. But I also teach them how to hire the people they want. So look at someone that you need around you, right? Who do you want that's brighter than you are? Can you handle that, right? How do you ask questions? So how do you ask a question about, today, one of the big things is work ethic, right? So the question about that, and I'll share this with everybody. Who taught you how to work and how old were you? Okay. And then what was your first job?
And probably how old were you when you had that first job too, right?
Yeah, right. Oh yeah, absolutely. But that's part of the conversation. Those are all legal questions, right?
Oh
But
yeah.
it's like, my dad taught me how to work at age 9. I wanted a BB gun. It was going to cost me $11, right? And he said, there's a 1/4 acre of brush I want cleared off next to the house. Here's the tools, go. Took me 3 hot, sweaty days to do it, but I did it, right? And so what that taught me was how to show up, how to make a commitment, how to follow through.
Yeah, I love that example. I mean, for me, I started at it, not as young as you age, but definitely high school, working a work study at my high school to help pay for my school because I was private, and also working at the mall at a clothing store as well as a restaurant. So plus going to school, right, as a teenager. And why did I do that? It was because my mom was a single mom, and anything I could do to help ease her burden that I could do easily or give me some free money to go and play with, go and hang out with my girlfriends and do things like that. That's where my work ethic comes from. So that is interesting. Do you ever find a tough client, like what their background, do you see a trend in your clients in regards to kind of like where they work, where they've learned how to work versus, and it actually ties back to how they're running their business?
That connection,
Yeah.
the earlier they start, even if it's self-initiated. I had a gentleman that I worked with in the Southeast, and he wanted to hire a salesperson. So we dug into it to find out how to hire that person. Aware, good relationships. So his first job that he made for himself was to go sell lawn keeping to the neighborhood. But he didn't do it. He had his buddies do it.
He was an instant manager then, huh?
He made himself a manager, like right off the bat.
Love it.
And
That's so
and he
great.
was in his teen, he wasn't even a teenager yet. He was like 10.
Yeah. I do find, I mean, I'm a very analytical brain, and I love getting data and seeing the stories behind the data. I'm curious to see, like, are the majority of entrepreneurs that kind of story, right? Are they the ones that have the lemonade stand when they're 8 years old or
Yeah,
what's
right.
at 5 years old, right?
Well, there's another thing that I learned early. In my coaching practice, I bumped into a book called, hang on. Okay, I'll get it back in a second. The Birth Order book.
Okay.
Okay. And what that taught me was, did you know that 90% of the CPAs in the country are firstborn or only children? 90%, right?
That's intriguing.
Yep. So there are things like that, that family systems, the firstborn is something, secondborn, most of the presidents in the country have been, so 65 to 70% of the presidents have either been firstborn or only children. Men, unfortunately, but there we are, right?
Yeah.
So, but it takes that strength, and parents learn how to parent on the first child.
That's true. They're definitely harsher, more
Well,
strict, right?
yeah, harsher, more strict, right? But there's what that teaches children is self-discipline, right?
Yeah.
So
That's
at
a
age,
great connection.
right? So I'm going to jump off into a story. At age 18, I was at Oregon State University as a chemical engineer undergraduate. That was my first 2 years, and then I switched. Fall term freshman year, first time away from home, I developed an ulcerated colon. And when I got to the doctor in December, first week of December, his quote is, and these are 3 sentences, like, transformed my life. Gee, Brad, if you'd have waited 6 weeks to come see me, you'd have bled to death. So he had my attention, right? And it was bad, and apparently was that bad. Then he said, you'll never eat strawberries, corn, or lettuce, or anything with roughage ever again in your life. And my 18-year-old brain said, fat chance, buddy, that ain't happening.
Of course.
And then he said, the one that moved me, you have a psychosomatic disease. Your emotions affect the severity of your symptoms. And in that, because I knew what psychosomatic meant, even at 18, it's like, okay, my emotions are affecting what's going on with me. I can choose my emotions. And if I can choose my emotions, then I can unwind this disease out of my body. Okay.
Wow.
So I started on the hunt. Brad was the beaker. I watched my emotions. I finally figured out what the cause was and where, was the conditionality of love that I had experienced. Not all the time, but it was my interpretation of it. I had a spanking that I remembered at about age 10 months.
Oh, wow.
But I went back in at age 47 and reworked it. What I was doing at age 10 months, I had the lid off the diaper pail because I had a younger sister, and I had my hand in the diaper pail, swirling the diapers around. I freaked my poor mom out, right?
Oh my goodness. That
Wow,
sounds like a
right?
typical boy thing to do, right?
Well, of course, right? But it was fascinating to me. The clouds were moving, right? I had no idea, how bad it was for my health, right? Wash my hands, that sort of thing. But I decided that and what I realized was I'd gone from unconditional love to conditional love. And because I was in the process of potty training, my energy came from my colon to regulate that. And so as a result of that, I pushed energy into that and bent it when I was insecure, especially around being in love, right?
Yeah.
Being loved. So I went back and reworked that. Within a year, that was gone. But I was 47 before I figured that out.
Yeah. Wow. It is fascinating how we can be how fragile we are, how strong we are as human beings, and yet how so fragile we are, and how we can physically impact ourselves and those around us in that example that you shared. Wow.
So underneath that, when I'm in the middle of writing, actually, I'm probably halfway through writing a book on synchronicity. Because if you dig deep enough into the disease, and then all of a sudden you conquer it, and you look at the rest of your life, you're going, what else am I carrying around in my subconscious that's affecting my present moment? Right? So that's where all the affirmations and hypnosis and all of that stuff comes up. What thought did I choose early in my life that's kept me broke all my life? Or
Yeah, the
struggled
stories
hard?
that we tell ourselves of who we
Right.
are as human beings
And
and how we react to that in that moment.
right. And it doesn't even have to be a conscious recurring thought. It can just be buried down in your pre-verbal part, which that 10-month-old thing was, right? And I had
Yeah.
another set of at 8 months, excuse me, at 8 years and 13 years. And that pair combined affected my income and my relationships until I went back and fixed that. And it's
Mm.
taken me a while to get back to that.
And
So
now you're using what you've learned to help other people learn it earlier on in their life. Or
I'd
maybe
much
not
rather,
earlier on, but at
well,
least help them get to the same point.
yeah, right. So it's like,
Yeah.
do you want to achieve something that seems astronomical to you? It's possible. Get out of the way. How are you in the way? Learn, associate with people that are skilled and capable. Be aware.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brad. I really appreciate your time. And hopefully those on the call have got a couple of nuggets from our conversation. And if you want to continue the conversation with Brad, he is available, details below. Thank you so much, Brad. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day.